So you want a U.S. business bank? Okay, we are officially live. Thank you all for tuning in. We're currently live on YouTube, on Facebook, and there's also a restream link as well. So I have got the YouTube stream pulled up here. We also have the restream chat pulled up, and I'm able to answer any questions folks have. So whether you're on restream or you're on Facebook, if you can just start popping in your questions into the chat box, we will go from there. Otherwise, what I'll do is if there aren't any questions, but I know there are because I saw folks submit information beforehand, then I will run through an overview of the doula process, etc. So for now, though, I'm obviously going to prioritize people who are asking questions in the chat. That's the whole point of this event. Any question can be the most nuanced and most specific question possible. And from there, I will answer. So let me give folks a few minutes to join. And then as questions come in, I will go from there. So it looks like we got Latha saying hello. That is me. I'm typing from Doula HQ right here in the chat box. So yeah, I'll give folks a few minutes. Please start typing in your questions there, and then we can jump right in. Hey, Chris, how's it going? Sweet. I can see a few questions trickling in, so let's jump right in. What I'll do is I'll answer questions as they pop up, and then if I can, I'm also gonna batch together questions and answer them at the same time as well. So first up, we have a question on H-1B visas. And the question is, if you create a company in India, can the Indian company then file for an H-1B visa or participate in the H-1B lottery system? Now, the first thing I will say is that myself and Dula, we are not experts on immigration or visas. We actually have a partner who can help with that. So this goes for anyone. They offer free consultations. Our partner is LegalPad. So if you have any visa questions, save this link, click LegalPad, and I would go book a consultation with them. They can answer your specific questions. Now, regarding the H-1B specifically, I'm also going to share this article here. This is a post that we wrote regarding whether or not you can even open an entity if you have an H-1B visa. And the answer is yes. So I would check out this blog post here, which walks through the nuances of how and how you can't. One of the nuances, which is good to keep in mind, is that you're able to open the business, but there's a specific nuance around whether or not you're working for it. And for that, you would need a work visa or authorization. So to answer the question here, creating the company from India doesn't restrict you from participating in the H-1B lottery. You're able to do that regardless of, but I am not the best to answer whether or not that increases your chances or changes your chances. To my understanding, and again, I'm not a CPA or a visa expert or a lawyer. So again, I would chat with the LegalPad there. They'll be able to answer that much more precisely. But my understanding is again that one, not only can you open an LLC on an H-1B visa, but by starting your company in India or from India in the US, you're still able to apply for the H-1B visa and you can start the US company too. Okay, next question we had is for someone who isn't from the US, interested in opening a business in Delaware, how do taxes work and how much would you have to pay? Great question. Before I jump in, I'm going to make the obligatory disclaimer. Again, I'm not a CPA or a lawyer. However, we've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs around the globe, and I can share what we've seen here. So the first thing is that if you're a non-US resident and you're forming a US company, obviously you're going to form an LLC and you're going to get your tax ID number. Now in the US, taxes are done on a calendar year basis, meaning let's say you formed your company between January 1st, 2021, or let's say it's this year, January 1st, 2022, and December 31st, 2022. If your company is formed in that period, your first tax filing is due the following spring. So the way taxes work here are, and again, disclaimer, not a CPA, doola offers free tax consultations to get specific answers here. But from what we've seen on general, you form your company. The next year when tax season comes around, if you are let's say a single member LLC, you'll then have a filing called Form 5472, which is an informational filing with the IRS. And essentially the way it works is if you do not have effectively connected income or US sourced income, in English, the way you can think about that is, do you have anything physical in the US? Are you physically based in the US? Do you have physical employees? Do you have a physical warehouse? Anything physical means you likely do have effectively connected income. If you do not, then you actually do not have to file a US income tax return or a 1040 NR. And all you would have to file is this informational filing called Form 5472. So let's say in this question that Jocko, pardon me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. What you would have to pay in taxes is then one, the state fee in Delaware. So in every state, there's an annual report. In Delaware, it's called the franchise fee tax. That's $300 per year in Delaware. That goes directly to the state. Doola helps with that state filing, actually. So that's going to be due in Delaware. In Wyoming, it would be called your annual report. That's $60. So again, it differs on the state, the amount, but that's a tax of sorts that goes to the state. Then the other tax filing you would have to make is, again, that informational filing. You're not necessarily paying taxes. And again, the distinction there is that if you have a physical presence here, you then have to file the US tax filing and you have US sourced income. If you do not, then again, it's this informational filing, Form 5472, which you can think of as a status update on your company. And then you would pay taxes where you're based and where you currently pay taxes right now. So to recap again, the nuance here really depends on whether or not you are physically located in the US and if you have a physical presence here. If you do, then you likely will have to make a US tax filing and pay taxes here. If you do not, then you still have this informational filing requirement. However, taxes would then be paid in your home country. So given the question here and the understanding I have, which is not much, that's how I would specifically answer that question. Again, though, and this goes for everyone, when you work with Doola, you can get a free tax consultation the second you start, or you can do it 6 months, or you can do it the second you start and 6 months later. And the point we do that is because we want to make sure that folks, if you have any tax questions, you get them answered, given the nuance of your specific situation. But most of the people we work with are non-US residents, online businesses, no physical presence in the US. And if that's the case, then again, you actually do not have that tax filing requirement in the US, you have that informational filing requirement. Okay, fantastic. So you're doing business online, no physical presence in the US. So given that again, and this is given the context here, if you were to form, let's say, a Delaware LLC, each year you have that $300 annual franchise fee tax, which again goes directly to the state of Delaware. Doola helps with that filing. Doola makes no money from that, but the state does. It goes directly to the state. If you are then a single member LLC, you would have the filing called Form 5472, the informational filing, which again goes to the IRS. Think of it as a status update on the company. And it's important to get that filing in on time and accurately. There can be heavy fines if it's not done. So it's an important filing. But then taxes would then be paid in your home country where you are, as this is a purely online business. To recap again, this changes if you have effectively connected income or US source-based income, which means a physical presence in the US via employees, a physical warehouse, a physical office, or you physically being there, or having a physical storefront in separate states. Now, I'm actually going to continue to this question. Chris has a question on in doubt between Delaware and Wyoming. We get this question a lot. And here's how I answer it. And I'm going to give you an actual answer. I'm not going to say it depends. I'll give you my firm answer on what I actually think you should choose between. If you are a non-US resident, you can choose any state. You can actually choose any state in the US to form your LLC in. Now, if you've done some research, and it sounds like Chris here has, it comes down typically to two states, Delaware or Wyoming. Delaware is the most popular state in the US for entity formation. And a big reason why is because Delaware C Corps are formed there. And Delaware is just a very popular state in general for business formation. Wyoming, though, and not many people know this, is actually where the LLC first originated, where the LLC was born in the 1960s. Little history lesson. Now, the biggest reason why we actually see more online entrepreneurs based outside the US form a company in Wyoming is because it's cheaper. So you pay $60 to the state each year instead of $300. And Wyoming, again, is one of the most innovative states when it comes to LLC legislation. The first LLC was formed there. They're constantly pushing the boundary in terms of legislation and what is allowed and isn't allowed. So for non-US founders launching a US business with an online business, right? So let's say they're online, digital, it could be e-commerce or services or marketing, really anything. We recommend Wyoming because one, it is cheaper. You're going to save money, about $240 per year versus Delaware, and it's not a shabby state. Some say Wyoming is like the Swiss Alps of the Rockies in the U.S. The first LLC was formed there. So again, you're not choosing a bad state here as well. If anything, it's where the first LLC was born. So to answer directly, for cost savings and reputation and the legislation and the let's call it the way that Wyoming's innovative on the legislative front, I recommend Wyoming. However, you can choose any state as a non-US resident. And the reason why I would say another state might be better is you know your customers better than anyone. If you having a company in Delaware or I don't know in another state would make a significant impact to how you can acquire customers, you should do it. What we've seen is it actually doesn't have that much of an impact if you say Wyoming versus Delaware. But if you know your customers and you know that saying I have a Delaware company in the US will make a material impact, the good news is you can choose any state. Now, Chris, if you are actually based in the US, the answer to this question is different. You should then form the company in the state you live in. But as you can see here, the international image, again, this doesn't apply for every single customer or state. But what I would say is that if you know your customers best and saying Delaware has a better image, leads to more social trust, 100% you should do that too. So again, to recap, I recommend Wyoming. Everyone here knows their customers best. So for an image perception or perspective, if you think Delaware would have a better reputation, go for it. We can support both. Only difference there would, again, really the only difference materially would be that $60 fee to Wyoming versus $300. You're still going to get the bank account, the payment processor, your state fees and IRS filings are handled in full. Okay, and I see you're based in Spain. So in this case, again, I would defer to your customers in Spain or wherever you're selling to. If Delaware has a better international image, go for it. It's fully supported there. Little follow-up question here. The total cost for opening and managing the company, can doola help me with everything that is related to having and running the company there? And I'm going to combine this with actually the question on best states tax-wise to register a business. So the first thing is that this is why we built doola. The goal is that everything is included. We don't just form the company, but we handle the EIN number with the state. We handle setting up the bank account and payments through partners. And then we handle all of the ongoing compliance and tax filings. So those state filings, which I mentioned in Wyoming and Delaware, and then the IRS tax filings too, whether it's that informational tax filing or let's say you have a multiple member LLC, that's handled too. So if you actually go to our pricing page, you can see we have two plans or we have two pricing options for our plan. We only have one plan. It's the business plan. And that's because it includes everything you need. Full formation, all the compliance needed to keep your business up and running year over year. The two options are either monthly or annual. If you pay annually, it's just under $2,000, $1,999. If you pay monthly, it's $199 a month. Paying annually, you save about $389 for the annual savings. But for some folks, monthly is just easier to smooth out cash flow. So both of them work. And again, to answer the question here, and I'm going to tie this to what's the best state tax wise. Again, if you are an online business with no physical presence here, from a tax perspective, again, as I walk through from the international Form 5472 filing, as long as you don't have a physical presence here, then if you don't have effectively connected income, you're making that informational filing and paying taxes in your home country. So again, you'll have to pay the state tax. In Wyoming, it's 60. In Delaware, it's 300. But the best state tax-wise to register, again, if you're purely online, you have some flexibility here. Now, if you're physically operating in the US, that's different. If you're based in the state, then you're going to have to pay the state tax, the sales tax, etc. However, in this case, again, if you're purely online, selling online across multiple states, then each state has a different what's called economic nexus or limit for when you actually have to start collecting sales tax. However, the good news here is that if you're using a tool like Stripe, the sales tax is actually automatically calculated through a company they acquired called TaxJar. So that was a lot there, but again, I'm going to recap by saying the key distinction here, or the most important thing, is really, are you physically based in the US? If you're not, and it's an online business, that actually simplifies things in terms of the filings you'll have to make, which will help handle. But again, you then have that informational filing requirement, which is Form 5472, and then you would be paying taxes in your home country. And in this case example here, Latha is saying, I have a staffing company in India. I would like to register my company in the USA from India for my staffing operation for USA companies from USA. So here it sounds like, again, companies based in India, but it's going to be an online business or services provided online with customers in the US, which is okay. Customers could also be in other countries. And in this case, again, it doesn't sound like there's any physical presence in the US. So again, I'm coming back to that word physical because that's key. And it's the easiest way, in my opinion, to think about what is effectively connected income versus what is not effectively connected income. So to summarize there, doola can help with not just the formation, but we're going to handle the ongoing compliance. So the state filings and the IRS filings. When it comes to the compliance, which big question here is taxes, the biggest factor determines or is determined by whether or not you're physically based in the US or if your customer is physically based here. Now, depending on that, we'll still help with the filing, but that determines what filing would be done. Is it the informational filing or is it the US tax filing? So again, we'll help with the filing either way. And if your business changes in the future as well, which can obviously happen, that's okay. We have international CPAs who can actually help with regarding to figuring out, hey, how would this change your circumstance? And if things don't change, fantastic. Then each year you'll know exactly what filings are being done and need to be done too. Okay, I'm just going to quickly scroll here. Couple questions here. Let me just quickly read through them. Okay, so question here around if you're selling subscriptions to selling subscription via an app to USA customers, is there a risk the IRS will not distinguish the two types? Or is it safer to create two companies, one for exporting and one for a USA business? If I understand the question here, and we actually get this a lot, it sounds like the business or you might be thinking about selling two products or having two types of businesses. Now, the thing here is that technically, any company can have different product lines, right? I'll give a maybe crazier example. A lot of software companies, now this isn't a crazy example, software companies can sell software, but they could also sell merchandise or t-shirts. It's the same company selling software versus apparel, but they're still going to do it under one company. Now, if you were creating two entirely different companies, physical hardware, maybe microchips, and then also you want to do an Amazon store. Hypothetically, you could do that under one LLC. But the reason why you might not want to is, let's say you want to separate business from personal across those two businesses, and you want to have separate profit and loss and a separate entity to completely separate or have separate liability protection too. Then I would recommend two entities. But it's up to you. If they're two product lines and you are the founder and it's an umbrella company, then you can do them under both. But I would say the bigger distinction here is, do you want two separate bank accounts? Do you want to invoice customers from a different entity? Separate liability protection. That's the point of creating the LLC. And if those reasons sound more compelling, then I would advise to have two separate entities. But But it is really more of a business decision here, again, around how you want to separate those two lines there. And it looks like same product, two customer geolocations. Okay, if that's the case, then if it's the same product, and this is based on the context here, I actually think that, again, if it's online with no physical presence and the geos are globally, you could have one LLC. So again, the distinction, if you're an online business, the biggest distinction is, are you physically based in the US? But folks can sell globally. So again, you can sell globally. Your geo can be in the US, it could be in Europe, in Spain, in India, wherever it might be. But things change, or everyone listening should think there could be something that changes from my tax obligation perspective if I ever have a physical presence in the US. If we are three partners from different countries, where are we going to pay the corporate taxes? You can form a multiple member LLC with members in multiple countries. And if you're forming an LLC, then the tax filing that's going to be done is called a partnership return. So I'm actually going to link in the chat here a blog post which we have, which walks through US tax filing requirements. Again, we write and publish this info just so people are aware, but we handle these filings. So please go through and you can check out that multiple member LLC section and you'll see the filings. We're going to handle the 1065 filing, and that'll be done for the entire LLC, despite folks being in multiple countries. So yeah, to answer the follow-up here, Chris, around the Delaware LLC sells to US customers. That is not considered as local business, so not taxable in the US. There's multiple types of tax here, right? So let's take sales tax, for example. As I mentioned earlier, sales tax in the US, each state can have a different nexus. So give me 1 second. I'm going to just pull up this article here. We have this state guide, which walks through in every state in the US, what is the threshold you have to hit before you actually have to start reporting and collecting sales tax. Now, the reason why the state does this, by the way, is because if someone's just starting a business, the state actually isn't going to spend their time, or they don't want to have entrepreneurs spend time on, the little reporting or financial reporting for sales tax. But when your business hits a certain point, then the state's going to say, okay, we need to collect some tax on sales here. So in this case here, you can see some states actually have no sales tax threshold, which is awesome. Others do, but you can go through there and check things out. But again, to answer this question here, based on the context I have, if you're an online business and you're selling globally, even if you're selling to US customers, the thing here to keep in mind is that the taxes might come up, the sales tax might come up when you pass or reach that threshold, which is in this blog or sales tax guide here. And again, for everyone listening, maybe your customer or your situation is similar. For most of the folks we see, it's very similar. Online business, internationally, launching in the US. But if you do have specific questions or there's something nuanced you'd like to run through, again, we offer free tax consultations with CPAs available to all of our customers. You can do that the day you start. You can do that a month. You can do it a month and 2 months from now, etc. Question here around LLCs without a US presence that will still conduct business with clients based in the US. So how do you report taxes on that income? If you are working with US clients and they're paying your LLC, so let's say they pay your LLC through Stripe, and then through Stripe, the money is then deposited in your bank account. That money is in the bank account. And then let's say you're based in India, for example, or we have India and Spain from the chat I can see. When you wire that money back to pay yourself or pay a parent company, once that money is either paid out to someone or deposited in your home country, that's when you're going to have to pay taxes if you're paying yourself it as income. And again, the key thing to keep in mind here is that it's whether or not it's effectively connected or sourced income in the US. So if you really want to get in the weeds here, which is awesome, it's great that people are asking these questions, check out this blog, the US tax filing guide. It'll actually walk through exactly how the IRS, or even the state, but the IRS in this case, actually thinks about effectively connected income. And that's going to be the key factor on whether or not you have to pay or do the US tax filing versus just that informational filing requirement. And again, I'm going to stress here too, it's great that folks, and you should, this is awesome, have a pretty clear understanding of, hey, this is my situation, these are the filings that will be done, and cool, doola CPAs are going to help with that. However, if things change in the future, and that's okay, let's say you're an online business now, but 6 months from now, business is booming and you want to open up branches in the US, fantastic. We can help with those filings. We can even help with, you're going to have to do what's called a foreign qualification or a foreign filing in the state in the US which you're expanding to. So again, I wouldn't view these extra things as complications. Yes, it's an additional filing, but our goal is to be able to help you with that. We don't want to just help with the initial setup and then as your business grows, say, hey, sorry, we can't help there. So it's great to hear folks asking and making sure that, from a formation perspective or from a getting started perspective, things are in line. But things can change. Businesses can grow fast. Businesses can move to other states. And in any of those circumstances, our goal is to be able to help you expand to those new states. And if your filing needs to change too, as a reminder, for anyone starting today, your first filings are going to actually be due next April. Today's actually the deadline in the US. It's tax day. And today's the deadline for single member LLC filings. For multiple member LLCs, it's March 15th. So that is a lot of time until the next tax filing. The tax year would end on December 31st, 2022. So up until that time, or right away in January, if you had questions on, hey, I want to see how things are going, or I want to better understand exactly what my filing situation is going to look like, that's okay. Things will change. And if things do change, again, our CPAs are there to help answer and figure out, or help you better understand, here's exactly the filings that are going to be done. Okay, I'm going to take a quick pause there. We've gone over a bunch. Taxes, we've gone over effectively connected income. We've talked about Wyoming versus Delaware. Are there any other specific things I can touch on those, or happy to take other questions? Oh, hello, Krish. How are you? Okay, hey, Arnold. The question here for folks who are, and by the way, we're on YouTube, or at least I'm seeing questions coming in on YouTube, but for folks listening in on other channels, I'll just restate the question as well. Let's say someone has 3 SaaS or software as a service applications. Can you run them all under the same company, or do you have to create a company for each of them? Great question. The answer is it depends, and the it depends on, do you view each of these applications as entirely separate entities that you want to have with different bank accounts, fully different profit and loss, fully separate liability, etc.? If so, and these are completely separate entities or applications, then you might want to do separate LLCs. However, if it's you as the founder, or an umbrella company as the founder, and you would like to just work on these 3 software applications, think of it as a company having different product suites, you absolutely can do them under one LLC. What I would probably recommend here, actually, and this is given the limited context I would start by doing them under one LLC. It's easier for you. And then if you decide, hey, you know what? It makes sense for us to separate out one of these companies, or maybe 2, for liability reasons, or because you're saying, hey, we just want to have this entity and the payments and the banking stack completely separately. You could then create a new LLC. And under that LLC, work on that application. So given the context here, just to give you a firm answer, my recommendation would be 3 SaaS applications. You can run them under one company. And if you then decide you need to expand and have multiple LLCs, that's what I would advise there. Another question here on getting a one-on-one call. So we do offer one-on-one calls. However, there's a lot of folks we're chatting with, the calls that are scheduled today, for example, are with folks who are actually starting companies today. So if there are any folks here who are starting, hopefully the questions have been answered, and you can actually just go to our website and get started. But for folks who need one-on-one specific questions, there's a couple of things you can do. The quickest thing is actually you can go to our website and just click that chat button. And from chat, we have folks around the world who can answer questions. So Latha, I'm happy to, and pardon me if I'm mispronouncing, happy to answer any specific questions here. And it would actually be great if you could ask, because I know other folks have very similar questions. That's what we've learned. But if you have very specific questions, then you can message it via live chat. So just go to our website and click that chat button. We also have WhatsApp. So message us on WhatsApp. And then those are probably the quickest ways. I know some folks here prefer email. That totally works too. You can email us at hello@doola.com as well. Okay, a couple more questions here on accounting and then credit lines. So on accounting, and then this is something I've actually learned in different countries. What is accounting is different. Here's what I mean by that. In the US, right, a CPA, a certified professional accountant, is who does taxes. In the US, we also have this thing called bookkeeping. And again, in other countries, it's maybe similar, the titles, but the distinction is that a bookkeeper in the US prepares your financial books, right? Profit and loss statement, cash flow statement, etc. So we actually do not include bookkeeping in our packages. And the reason why is that you don't really need it when you start. And I'll tell you why. If you're doing things by the book, you're setting up your bank account, your payment processor, and doing everything business through those things, all of your financial transactions are going to be listed out neatly in your bank account and then also listed out neatly in Stripe through your payment processor. So it's extremely easy to export transactions from there, even view a financial summary from there too. If your business grows, and what we recommend is actually like once your business passes, let's say $10,000 in revenue, at that point, we might recommend, hey, maybe you want to get a professional bookkeeper. But even before that, and this is actually what our company did, there are tools like QuickBooks that you can use that make it incredibly easy to sort of self-serve categorize your books, right? Payment, it integrates with your bank account, integrates with Stripe, and it's extremely easy to do that. So the question here is to answer directly, I don't recommend when starting from scratch to get bookkeeping. I think it's an extra cost. And if you're doing things again right by the book, you have it set up through your bank and through Stripe. As your business grows, though, we actually have partners, CPA partners, and software tools that can help you with bookkeeping. We can actually help with that too. So in this specific case, again, it is not required to form your company. It is not required to get your tax number or bank account or payment processor. I know that actually is different in certain countries. But in this case, again, not required upfront. And what I would say, and this is what we learned, is when we started the company, we used QuickBooks. It was very simple. As our revenue grew and as the books got more complex, then we thought, hey, at this point, we're generating enough revenue. We should then pay for a bookkeeper to do this on a monthly basis. Hope that's helpful there. We have a question here on will the LLC be subject to a credit line? And then the second question I'll get to after. Yes, you actually can access credit in the US, even if you're a non-US resident, and even if you have no credit history. And the way you can do that is we have a partner who can help. You can actually see our full stack of partners on this page, but the specific partner I want to highlight is a company called GetDivvy. And they will actually let you, one, apply for a business credit, and two, if you don't have credit history, they have a credit building program too. So not every LLC wants or needs credit, but Claudio, in this case, let's say you set up your bank account and you're like, hey, would love to get a credit card or a credit line. Then at that point, we have a referral link. You can go directly to Divvy, and through them, you can apply for their program. They'll either issue it right away or they'll say, hey, we'd love to help, but we need to build some credit first, and then they pop you in that credit building program. The next question Claudio had was what documentation is provided throughout the process. So we provide updates every step of the way. When you form your company, you'll get notified, hey, company was formed. You'll get emailed when we need a signature for your tax ID. When that number comes back, we'll send you links to your bank account, etc. The documentation provided is you're going to get all the docs, and they'll all be accessible through a digital dashboard, the doola dashboard. And in that dashboard, you can access your articles of organization, your operating agreement, your EIN letter from the IRS when that comes back. When tax filings are done, if there's any docs that come in there, if you get any mail, it's scanned and uploaded to that portal too. So everything's digital and it's all uploaded to that account. So Claudio, the documentation, you'll get access to all the docs. Everything's digital, certified copies provided by the state, which we'll upload to that folder. And at any time, it's accessible. So the whole point is we want you to be able to, manage this company from anywhere, and that's why we provide that dashboard. Okay, I'm going to touch on Latha's question first, which is the understanding of if you register a staffing company here, can you then hire people in the US? And do I need to have a physical location? So I'll answer this backwards. You do not need to have a physical location. You can hire folks remotely. However, if you are going to be hiring employees in the US, which can be done, you're going to actually then, depending on where the employee is, file for what's called a foreign filing. So let's say you form your LLC, non-US resident. Let's say you go with Wyoming, most popular state, or Delaware, but let's say Wyoming. Let's say you then hire someone in New York. You're technically now doing business in New York because you have an employee doing business there. Therefore, you'll have to do a foreign qualification filing. And we can actually help with this. Why? Because we know that this happens as companies grow. And specifically, I'm going to send this post here, which sort of walks through again, so you can have a better understanding of what exactly is happening here. But what it is it's saying, hey, I have an LLC in this state. We're now doing business, and in this case, doing business means having an employee in that other state. So therefore, let's do the foreign filing. Now your LLC is officially registered to do business there. So you could hire candidates in the US, depending on where they're based, you'll have to do the foreign filing. You do not need a physical location. It can be done virtually. We have a virtual address in Doola, in New York, San Francisco, and in Delaware. Our headquarters is in New York. We have virtual addresses in 2 other states. Why? Because we wanted an address there. And we used to operate out of California, and our company was formed in Delaware. So again, it can all be done virtually. If you are physically based here and you have an office, sure, then you can use that as an address too, but can have a virtual address and have a virtual presence. Okay, we have a question here on if you sell courses online and let's say you made several hundred thousands of dollars, you pay taxes on the money in the country where you reside, and then how are profits split? So again, I'm gonna, in this specific case, based on my understanding here, and again, this goes for anyone. If you have specifics, we'll set you up with that free tax consultation. You can do as many as you'd like, but usually you get all your answers done in the first one. If you have no physical presence in the US, no effectively connected income, then correct. The revenue you generate, assuming it's not above that economic state tax threshold in any state, and Stripe will actually help you calculate this automatically. Through their software, they acquired a company called TaxJar, which automatically calculates that. So in this case, again, based on the understanding, if there's no effectively connected income with the US, no physical presence, this is purely online, then the money you make, right, you wire it back to your country and you pay yourself there. Wherever you are based is where you are going to pay taxes. And for splitting profits, if I understand here, this would be up to you and the team. So if there's multiple members in multiple countries or multiple folks in one country, I think that's how you would actually split things up there. So that's more of a personal decision, or in this case, yeah, mix of personal and business decision there. But there's no rule on the US side of things or on doula's side of things on, hey, you need to do an even split of profits, or only one person, the person whose name is listed first or is on the EIN, can get the profits there. And again, this is why even if you didn't have a question on profit splitting or do you need a physical location, really appreciate the 2 of you asking those questions, because I know folks can have very similar questions, or the biggest thing we've learned is that most people, and this applies to anyone, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's one of the scariest things about launching a company, especially in the US, is you've done research. Everyone here clearly has, which is awesome. But there's so many things which you're not fully aware of. And that's why we think the biggest value we provide is that we help you, peer around the corners which you didn't know exist. And hey, there's a state filing due or an IRS filing due. Or did you know that, hey, once you get your EIN, or you can't get your bank account until this stage, or hey, this sort of filing requirement changed, or by the way, you mentioned you're starting an LLC in a new state or hiring someone. We'll proactively tell you you need that foreign LLC filing. So we believe that's the biggest value we provide, and it's why we're an ongoing subscription. We work with you for the long term, is because your business needs don't end after you form a company. Yes, that's a big deal, and you want to make sure you get it right. But again, our goal is to be with folks for the long term. Question here about if after some time you decide to move away from doula, is all company property and documentation handed off? Great question. And I'd say it's a very pragmatic question too. We've gotten asked before, hey, like, what if doula just shuts down tomorrow? We obviously hope it doesn't, but hey, anything can happen, right, to any business. So to answer this question, your company is yours, your documents are yours. Everything is yours. We're not hiding docs from you. You have access to it at any time. You can download them. The things you do have to keep in mind, and this is whether or not, let's say, doola were to disappear tomorrow, or if you were to go start to do things on your own, you would then have to personally take care of some very important things. And I'll list through the biggest ones. The first is a registered agent. That is required for any US entity in any state in the US. And the second you start with doola, we actually activate that service. It's required. It serves as a liaison between the state and the IRS and your company for important state notices and IRS notices. And if you do not have a registered agent, your company can actually be what's called administratively dissolved by the state. So that's the first thing. You'll have to find a registered agent. Second thing is state filings. These are due in every state, right? In Delaware, it's the franchise fee tax. In Wyoming, it's the annual report. These filings have to be done. Otherwise, again, the state can administratively dissolve your LLC. And then the third big one, and we've talked about this at first, IRS filings. And I didn't say tax filings because, again, as we saw, in certain cases, it's just an informational filing, but these filings are critical. So again, folks, you could do them on your own, but part of why we created this business is we want to handle all of this for you. And the IRS filings are critical, right? Yes, it's an informational filing, but the IRS can administer a big fine. For Form 5472, fine can be actually $25,000 for an incorrect or a late filing of that form, which is a very steep fine, which is why we say, hey, not only get the filing in, but start that filing early. And for everyone, for the record, if you're starting a company this year, the filing is due next spring. So you have ample time. But again, to recap here, and this is a very pragmatic question, Claudio. If for whatever reason you decide, hey, I want to do things on my own, or if doola were to disappear, it's just very important that those things are taken care of. So registered agent, state filings, IRS filings. And then the other thing too, which is what we try to provide value in is, as I mentioned, let's say you start hiring, as Latha had a question about, hey, if I start hiring candidates in the US, we actually do foreign qualification filings for our customers. So it's not just about that initial, stack of services or products, but we'll help you do those other filings. Or let's say, for example, you want to form another LLC. We have customers who start with one. We've had a couple of questions here around, should I create 2 entities or 3? We have folks who start multiple businesses, and through doola, they can manage all of those companies through us, which makes it easier. You're not only talking to one person for one company, but all your companies are managed here too. So to recap here, your information is yours, your docs, your company. It's not ours, it's not the state's, it's yours. But the biggest thing to keep in mind is that it's not just about forming the company. There's ongoing compliance that needs to be done too. And that's part of our biggest value, and then being that long-term partner as well. So fantastic question there. Very pragmatic too. I think it's on any entrepreneur to prepare for, anything that could happen in the future, any of those edge cases too. Okay, great question here. And the question is, do you have any restrictions for countries/origin of the founders of an LLC? Great question. Little tidbit of learning here. We do not have any restrictions on where a founder is based to form an LLC. However, certain banks do. Now, these banking restrictions are actually determined part-wise on a federal level. So it's determined on the US level. It could be sanctions against certain countries. It could be financial treaties. It could be policy. It runs the gamut in terms of specifically why. But the reason why I mention that is because even though we can form an LLC for anyone in any state, we're going to tell you upfront if your country is on a list that is restricted by banks. Because many folks here, we know you don't just want the LLC or C Corp. You want a tax number and a bank account. And Stripes, you can accept payments globally in the US dollar. And if we know you're not going to be able to achieve that, then we're going to tell you upfront. If you just need an LLC, sure. Now, to answer the question, you can actually check out the list of countries here. So I'm actually going to paste it. I'll paste it in the chat here. And you can actually see this is the up-to-date list of countries which are not accepted. And again, this is for, oh wait, hold on. There's a lot of text here. So let me chop this into 2 messages. Okay, so how to support companies. This is from one of our banks, which matches the banks across the board. So here are the companies which are not currently supported. So again, to clarify here, This means you cannot be a resident of one of these countries. It means actively living. You can have a passport from the country though, but you cannot be actively living in the country. So let me send this and then this. So there's the list right there you can see. So proud to support US incorporated companies, meaning a US entity which we help with, across the globe. You can do it remotely too. You don't have to visit the US. They cannot open accounts for founders living in the following countries. So to recap, you can have a passport in one of these countries. You cannot live in that country. And again, we can support forming a company, but we're going to be super transparent. This is something we take seriously. We don't like to mislead folks. If EINs are taking 6 weeks, we're going to tell you it's taking 6 weeks. We're not going to say it takes 2 and then every week say, hey, sorry, we think it'll come next week. It's your business. We'll be straightforward with you. If things speed up or slow down, we'll let you know too. So this is why we want to let folks know upfront that, yeah, technically you could form an LLC if you live in Cuba, but you're going to have issues when it comes to applying for the bank. And the last thing I'll add here is if you're listening and let's say you're a resident of one of these countries, things change. Banks change their policy. The US changes its policy too. And when that does happen, we update this list. And at that time, obviously, we'd love to work with you. Had a question here from Chris around, do you offer a dedicated account manager? The answer is no, and I'm going to explain why. We don't just have a single dedicated account manager, and we tried this. We actually in the past said, hey, whoever last talked to a company before they started, you chat with that company and no one else does. But the issue we had is that our customers are global. So I'm based in New York. We have folks in Argentina on our team, in Germany, and in India. And what happened was that if someone was just off work or it was the weekend and someone wasn't working then, or they were asleep, we had customers with urgent questions like, hey, my EIN's in, I don't know how to apply for the bank account. And what happened is that we would not be able to answer a question immediately. So what we do now is that certain people call it run point on certain customers because they built a relationship. That's fun for us. I mean, I've talked to obviously many customers and I recognize all your names now. So hopefully when y'all start working with us, I'm going to recognize the names and I'll remember the questions too. But if you have questions, part of the reason why we have, live chat support, which is integrated with our team and WhatsApp, is because anyone around the globe can answer that question right away. Again, we specifically have time zone coverage around the world because while we need to sleep, we know your business never truly sleeps. So if I'm asleep in New York or, someone in India is asleep, then maybe someone in Germany can answer or vice versa, right? Someone in Argentina can answer too. So yeah, Chris, in this specific example, you'll be able to chat with many folks on the team. If there's someone specifically on the team that you're chatting with about a very nuanced issue, then sure, they'll help run point on that. But our goal is we want everyone on the team, and this is something we take seriously, to have full context on start to finish what's required so that anyone can seamlessly jump in and answer questions. Okay, I'm going to do a quick follow-up here on the bank, and then I'm going to switch back to the a question we have here around profits and transferring money. Can you guarantee that a newly formed LLC can open an account with a reputed brick and mortar bank, not a virtual bank? Okay, I'm going to answer this directly in the same spirit I said before, super candidly. We're not going to, mislead anyone here. We, doola, cannot guarantee that a bank will accept your application. And I know you're not assuming this, Chris, but the thing here is that a bank has to run the review process. They have to. We can't influence that. They run that process. That process is actually separate within the bank. They take it seriously. And what they're doing in that process, just so everyone's aware, it's called KYC or Know Your Customer. They're seeing if you're real. That's why they ask for a passport. It's a real person. You are. They're then seeing, is this an actual US entity? We will provide those docs. We can guarantee that. Do they have a tax ID number? We don't make these tax ID numbers up. We get them from the IRS. We can guarantee that. Now that information is then given to the bank, whether it's a virtual bank or a brick and mortar bank. And the bank then has to run the review. So now the question is, can you guarantee the bank will open it? We can't guarantee it because again, the bank has to run that review. But assuming that you're a real person with a real passport, you have a real US entity, a real tax ID number, and we provide both of those, you provide a passport. As long as your business is legitimate, 99.999% of the time, the bank's going to open the account. Now, the only reason why I don't say 100% is because if your bank or let's say your company is a high risk business, right? And that can be determined by the bank. But like some examples of types of businesses banks can't support: adult entertainment, marijuana, money service businesses. Like we're talking financial trading specifically, not working with money. If you're on that list, then certain banks might have certain restrictions. But the way I answer this question, and I'm saying this just in a very straightforward manner, I will not and we will not as a company guarantee the bank is opened, bank accounts open, because the bank has to run a review. But from what we've seen, again, if you have an entity, an EIN, a legitimate business, you're a real person, there's no reason to believe your account will be rejected. So I hope that's helpful there. And then the other thing to answer on the brick and mortar side, the reason why we partner mostly with these virtual banks is because they let you open in a bank remotely without visiting the US. So anyone here, you can come to the US and walk into a Bank of America branch and open an account. But Bank of America will require you to walk into that branch. Banks like Mercury or banks like Relay Financial, for example, will not. So I know for many folks here, flying to the US is time consuming, it's expensive, and the benefit of our process and what we do is we can let you do everything remotely. But in the future, if you decide, hey, I'm going to be in the US or I'd like to visit the US, you can walk into any branch, you'll have all the documents you need, and then the bank will require you to do that process. So, Chris, what I would recommend here is, if you are based internationally now, open up a virtual account. And then if you ever come to the US, or maybe you're coming now, you can walk into a branch and then open up an account there too. From Claudio, just looping around here, question around, is Nicaragua on the accepted or restricted list of countries? So currently now, our banking partners cannot open an LLC or cannot open the bank account for your LLC if the founder is a resident of Nicaragua. Now, again, things can change, but as of now, that is their policy there specifically. I'm looping back now. So we had a question on, I'll just address it at a high level. Like, you're making money in the US in your US bank account in Stripe. What do you do? Like, how do you pay yourself? How do you send it back to your country? Easy. So it's in your, let's say you accept payments through Stripe. Stripe is then connected to your bank account. So all of your money is deposited there. Or you can accept money directly to your bank account via wire or check. From there, international wire. That's how you're going to send the money back to a business bank account in your country or a personal bank account. You can do that as much as you'd like. Most folks we see typically do it on a monthly basis, but you could do it bi-monthly. You could do it randomly whenever you feel like it. So there's no set rule on how often or the cadence in which you need to, or you don't even need to wire money back. You could keep money there if you'd like. So to answer there again, how often, it's up to you. You can transfer the money at any time. I guess it's a business decision there. And it's up to you on whether or not you want to transfer. Again, if you want to keep cash in the US bank account, you can. And annually, for example, let's say you wanted to send money back and administrator, income payments to people, etc., that would be up to you then. Another great question here. What happens if doola accidentally forgets the mandatory state or IRS filings? What safeguards are built in? In the past, we actually didn't, as part of our plans, offer, we didn't include the state and IRS filings. Now our plan fully includes that. So for every customer who works with us, we do those filings. Now, the case when we don't do the filings is in two things. One, sometimes we need certain information from folks to pass it along to a CPA, or you need to chat with our CPA to make sure they can get the filing done. If you are unable to chat or you don't chat with them, we're obviously blocked there. So if we do require involvement, and obviously we know everyone here is interested in their company and is working on the business, that's one case where things can go wrong. But the thing we do is, even tax season ended today, we message everyone. We send a lot of reminders too. We apologize in the emails for saying, hey, pardon our persistence. We want to make sure that we have 100% compliance across the board. Now, let's say, to answer your question directly, we forget to do a state filing. We just simply forget. If that were to happen, we're going to rectify the mistake. If there's a fee, that's a mistake we made. We will handle it. So again, our goal is to get all the filings in and on time. If someone didn't opt for those filings as part of our previous plans, we'll ask, and obviously folks are able to do them on their own. But now, as you can see, We have a business plan which includes state and IRS filings. If we need information from you, we're going to ask early, and we just need your cooperation for that information. If after asking, and let's say a state filing comes around, and on our side, for whatever reason, we don't do the filing, we'll get the filing in, and if it's a mistake we made there, 100% doula will eat that cost and we'll handle it and make sure the filing gets in. And in terms of safeguards, just so you can have like a peek behind the curtain on what's happening, we have, we have lists of all of the customers we work with, what filing requirements they have, filing requirements by state, and dedicated folks in our team who not only do the filings, but make sure that we're keeping track of, even when people tell us, hey, I'm doing the filing on my own, we mark that down because our goal is, again, compliance. We obviously hope you work with doula, and in this case, it is included in the plan. But in the past, we had some customers who, in previous offerings, that wasn't included, and they decided to do it on their own there too. Question here on, do we get a debit card that we can use for expenses? Yes. So a debit card is included in the bank account. You get a virtual card and a physical card. The physical card is actually, or can be mailed internationally to any location. So I'm going to send this FAQ here where you can dig in and check that out more. But the virtual card is nice because right away you have that card which you can start using. And then the physical card, you can just write that address down and the card can be sent to you as well. Okay, well, we are at the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If there are any questions, as I mentioned, something you'll see about working with doula is that we take customer service and support very seriously. That happens before you start with us. So if you have any follow-up questions, go to our website, just click that chat button, and you'll be able to ask us questions. We're happy to help. If you prefer email, which I know some folks do, which is fine. Sometimes I do, just keeps things cleaner. hello@doola.com is the email. And then the last thing is that I mentioned we have WhatsApp too. So if you prefer using WhatsApp, you can chat with us there too. So that is that there. And the other thing I'll say for everyone listening is, well, first of all, thank you for tuning in on Easter, but we are running a little Easter promotion. So for folks who are able to start today, you're going to get a little discount. So again, obviously, take the time to do your research. You need to make sure you feel comfortable, and I hope we went through a lot of great content today. So thank you, everyone, for asking questions. But just message in on chat if you are getting started today, and someone on the team can provide a link with a way to use that. So I will thank everyone here. We're going to wind this down, and we'll be back next week or the week after with another episode, if you will. But again, in the meantime, questions don't stop here. So we take it seriously. We want to be able to help you even before you start and demonstrate the type of service we provide and the support we have. So feel free to give us a message. You can email us, WhatsApp us, or live chat us online. And very excited to work with everyone and get to know them here too. Cool. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll give folks just a couple of minutes to see if there's any last questions that pop up. Okay, I'm actually going to I can drop the URL right here. So feel free to message it to our team, but I'm dropping in this little coupon here. This expires tonight. So yeah, feel free to use this link, or you can just message someone on the team. If you just dipped out before I sent this, apologies, but I just was able to pull it up here. But happy Easter to everyone. Classic entrepreneurs here on an Easter Monday chiming in for the call. But yeah, this is why we know, your business is operating around the clock from all over the world, and we want to help you wherever you're based. So thank you all for the fantastic questions. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to live chat us, WhatsApp us. You can email us at hello@doola.com. And whether or not you work with us, it was a pleasure. I learned a ton from chatting with folks from around the world. And It's always fun for us to see folks working on and launching businesses wherever they are based. Cool. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to tune out. And again, please message in if you have any questions.